Meet the man who sold Eiffel Tower to scrap metal dealers. Yes, Eiffel Tower, the most iconic monument of France. Can you ever imagine selling a national monument? The answer is obvious. No, you can't. But this is Victor Lustig, a con artist who sold it not once, but twice. He was the ultimate swindler who even made people believe he invented a portable machine that could print genuine currency notes. And he was so deep an artist, he dared to con the most formidable gangster of his time, Al Capone. Yes, Al Capone, who would throw cheaters to sharks without a slightest hesitation. What was his magic? And how could he display such daring feats? In this story, we will dissect his scams and enjoy how his marks failed to see the traps he had set for them. Stay tuned to discover how one man became the legend of all con artists. Let us start with his famous scam of a money box he called Rumanian Box, a machine he claimed could print currency notes. What a claim! Easy to make, but hard to prove, isn't it? But for Victor Lustig, it was just another job. And he fooled a number of people into believing that the machine was actually capable of printing currency notes. So much so that one of his customers happened to be an on-duty sheriff. And the reason he could sell his idea was his thorough knowledge of the human race. Lustig knew that deep down, everyone desires to find a smart way to gain riches without the pains of hard work. Poor souls, aren't they? And all he had to do was to exploit that desire against his marks. And for that, he had to approach his target with his goal covert in his talks. However, executing the scam in practice is quite different from understanding it in theory. It requires military-like precision and unwavering confidence. So, how did he actually make the people believe in his invention? He must have pitched his claim on solid ground. Let us uncover the ingenious measure he took to tip off the scam. It was in the year 1923. During his days in the States, he designed a machine. It was the size of a steamer truck, a box made of mahogany wood. The box was embedded with a number of fascinating chain wheels, gears, levers, and a paper roll, so that it appeared to be very complex and sophisticated. The machine had two slots, one for taking in a note and the other for spitting out the freshly printed notes. Lustig maintained that if a certain bill was inserted in the machine and certain chemicals were applied, the machine could print the same currency bill. He always gave practical demonstrations to establish its veracity. In order to convince his marks, Lustig would ask them to hand him a bill of a certain denomination, for example, a $100 bill, and he would insert the bill in one slot, and the machine would produce a fresh bill of the same denomination from the other slot. He would then take his marks to a bank to prove the authenticity of the bills. The bankers never detected the bills to be counterfeited because Lustig would always put real and fresh bills in the machine before starting his scam. But wait a minute. He could never openly sell his product in public because in that case, police would arrest him. Then how did he sell the fake machine? Well, Lustig had the people skill that was unprecedented, and he always picked inattentive rich folks for his money box scheme, but he never approached them bluntly. For example, once, he identified a mark, picked his pocket, and stole his wallet. He then returned it like a reasonable citizen and said, "Sir, is this yours? I found it lying on the floor." His tone was extremely considerate and respectful. The mark was amazed to see a perfect example of honesty, dignity, and civilization. Lustig, a master of conversation, extended his charming talks, and after a while, skillfully directed the discourse towards his invention, the money box. He was now in full control of his victim's mind. The mark showed signs of disbelief, but at the same time, he was intrigued. And at this particular juncture, Lustig diverted the discussion as he did not want to talk anymore about the money machine. This turn of events fueled the curiosity of his mark, and he insisted on a demonstration. Lustig then took him to his hotel room and displayed the wonder of his invention that left the poor victims with his jaws dropped open in awe and surprise. After he had gone through all the motions, Lustig, being a crafty speaker, expressed his urgent need for money. and since the machine took 6 hours to print one currency note, he was in the perils of financial crisis. But Lustig did not show any intention of selling the money box, and that was where his prey was prompted to buy the money box, but precisely at this very moment. Lustig showed his disinterest and reluctance. The prey kept on increasing his offer, and eventually, Lustig agreed when his victims gave his highest offer. Every time, Lustig, during his demonstration, would casually reveal that there was only one problem, that the machine took 6 hours to print a note. Indeed, he needed that time to flee the area. He would also leave at least 2 genuine currency notes inside the machine, buying himself enough time to make his escape before the victim realized the scam. He sold a number of his fake machines. Some say that he charged thousands of dollars for each of them. The poor victims were left with no choice but to stay quiet in embarrassment because they could not file a case with the police about a machine that was supposed to print forged currency notes. And the Rumanian Box Scam is nothing in comparison to the selling of Eiffel Tower. But before we proceed with exploits of this marvelous con man, let us find out the origins of this man and the circumstances that shaped his life. How did a starving street kid become sophisticated enough to convince wealthy businessmen to buy France's national monument? His con life officially started in a chance encounter outside a luxury hotel that would change him forever. Majority agree that he was born in the year 1890, and his birthplace is Hostin, a town which is part of the present-day Czech Republic. But nothing can be said with certainty because in the little time that he lived, he had to change his identities to erase the trails of his criminal acts. Some accounts have it that he took more than 45 assumed names, and each time, he would present new credentials with different parentals and a different birthplace. And that is why his real identity is a mystery. But historians agree that he was born of poor parents. The same poverty that made him extra conscious at a young age. After the separation of his parents, he was sent to live with his relatives. But Lustig soon realized it would be better for him if he lived on his own. And that's when he cut loose of his past. He quit school at the age of 12 and ran away to Paris where he started begging. And sometimes he would rummage for food in the trash. During one of those early days in Paris, he once saw a spectacle that he could not make sense of in the start. He was standing outside a grand hotel and watching a man in the company of a lovely lady. The couple was busy talking while the waiter kept bringing dishes after dishes. It was a splendid feast. But what next? The couple retired without even looking at the food. Lustig could not accept the disparity, but he soon realized that the only difference between the two extremes is the amount of wealth they possess. And that's what sparked a desire in him to earn as much money as was possible. He resorted to pickpocketing and small thefts. With the passage of time, he developed a great agility and sleight of hand in stealing money. And the same dexterity of hand later made him a champion at playing cards. He swindled a lot of people in poker. He outdid his opponents by applying different dishonest tactics. For example, he would use marked cards in the game. These marks were only visible to an expert like him. Lustig identified those marks to know the cards in his opponent's hands and used that knowledge to his advantage. Moreover, he would switch out less favorable cards with better ones that he had hidden beforehand. But all these tricks demanded swift and timely movement of hands. Later on, he used this dexterity of hands in a number of his greater scams. Lustig could not resist the urge to earn more and more money and kept himself engaged in thefts and scams. He earned a bad reputation in Europe and was put behind the bars a number of times. Some say he had been a guest of prison for more than 40 times in different locations, such as Budapest, Prague, Zurich, and Vienna. But every time he was behind the bars, he would devise a new scam. He had mastered a number of languages, including French, English, Spanish, and Esperanto. He could use these languages creatively to his advantage. His command on language and rhetoric was a great support in his scams. With the police intelligence at his tail in France, he decided to change his battlefield and move to America, a land of opulence and opportunities. On the ocean liner from France to New York, he found some rare opportunities to earn more money. He happened to see a lot of rich people traveling in the ship. He devised a new scheme. He looked around and picked the most ideal marks. He got them engaged with him in a very smooth way. The poor folks didn't even know it was he who wanted to talk. His skill at talking was amazing. His discourse had always been pitched at a perfect angle that invariably won the confidence of the unsuspecting people engaged in the dialogue. Those were rich, delicate people, and Lustig had got a bait they couldn't resist. He knew that those delicate folks loved art, and sometimes even pretended to love art as it was in vogue, and therefore, he pretended to be a rising musician. His charming conversation was killing. They felt they were about to lay their hands on a source of wealth, fame, and glamour. The fine folks couldn't resist it and didn't even realize their hands reaching out to their wallets and invest in his imaginary Broadway production. But once the port of destination arrived, Lustig would disappear and they would hear from him no more. He would travel across the Atlantic and fleece the fellow travelers. During one of those trips, an incident took place that left a permanent scar on his left cheek. It so happened that he enraged a sailor by getting a little more intimate with his girlfriend. Victor Lustig would tell people that the scar was a souvenir from a duel of honor, but in reality, it was a feedback from a disgraced boyfriend. After World War I had started, voyages in the Atlantic and English Channel almost ceased to exist because of naval attacks among the enemy countries. Lustig had to shift to dry lands, and that was when he decided to go to America because it was a land of wealth and a booming economy, and he would get a lot of people to scam. It was the year 1922. Lustig first landed in America. He was the complete opposite of his early childhood. Dressed like a gentleman, he passed for an aristocrat. He had transformed himself into a new person with an elite persona, and he introduced himself as Count Victor Lustig. People did take him for one because of his aristocratic style of speech and body language. And after a little time, he ripped off a bank scam. He entered a bank and offered them bonds that were tied up to a repossessed property. He demanded cash in exchange for bonds. He got the teller to pay him the money with his slick talk, and once he received the cash, he showed his sleight of hand and escaped with both cash and bonds. Defrauding a bank was a federal crime, and coupled with the Rumanian Box, put a lot of investigations at his tail. After the investigation to catch Lustig intensified in the United States, he decided to go back to France. Little did he know, he was about to conceive a plan so bold that it would stun the world. A heist involving the most iconic monument of France. It was the year 1925. While reading a newspaper in Paris, Lustig chanced upon a newspaper article discussing the costly maintenance of Eiffel Tower. After World War I, France, like other war-stricken countries, went through economic downfall, and the government found it difficult to spend enough on preserving the national monument. The article made a passing comment that the majority of the people may support the removal of the monument, and this was what gave Lustig an idea for his daring scam that has no parallel in the history of crimes. But how is it possible to sell something which no sane man can ever believe is for sale? Let us unravel how Lustig accomplished this task. He did some research work and hired a forger to produce fake government stationery for him. Next, he booked a conference room in an elite hotel and called a small select group of scrap metal dealers. He observed all protocols of an official meeting and introduced himself as Deputy Director General of the Ministry of Posts and Telegraphs. He presented the case of Eiffel Tower in a very discreet manner, elaborating the background and the current position of the monument. He revealed that the costly maintenance of the monument had pushed the government to sell it out in the larger interest of the nation. He continued that aside from the money spent on its repair, the monument is not in harmony with other monuments of the city, like Gothic cathedrals or Arc de Triomphe. He had already won their confidence with his articulate speech and convincing arguments. He then thought it wise to reveal that the whole affair was to be kept covert because the French took great pride in Eiffel Tower, which was almost synonymous with their country, France, and therefore, the decision of removing the monument was bound to attract severe public criticism. Lustig knew the iron was hot, and it was the perfect time to hit even harder. So, he glorified the participants by saying that they were selected because they were considered honest and patriotic. Lustig had a shrewd understanding of human psychology, and therefore, he knew how to benefit from their greed. Although he understood their inner motives, he played absolutely naive and presented his case as though scrap dealers would be helping out their country in buying the monument. During his talk, Lustig kept scrutinizing all of them to find the one who would be most easy to proceed with. His keen eyes picked André Poisson. His selection was perfect. Poisson happened to be a desperate businessman who cherished to rise up amongst the business community in Paris, but was not certain how to achieve his goal. All the dealers sent their bids to Lustig, but he invited Poisson to a private meeting. Lustig wanted to squeeze maximum money out of his wallet, so he cooked another story. He confided to Poisson that the other bidders have pitched far better offers than that of Poisson. Lustig further revealed that he was a corrupt official and was not satisfied with the salary he received from the government. So, if Poisson could pay him a certain amount as bribery, he would approve his bid. Poisson was convinced that by getting the ownership of Eiffel Tower, he would secure a respectable place among the top businessmen of Paris. So, he consented to pay a large amount as a bribe, along with the agreed price of Eiffel Tower. Lustig received 70,000 francs and fled to Austria. And what happened to Poisson next was truly pathetic. The poor chap went to Eiffel Tower with his team of technicians to dismantle the structure. When asked by the security guards, he showed him the transfer letter handed him over by Lustig. The guards looked at the documents and said, "Sir, you'd better go back, or it will become the joke of the century," in which it became later on. Poisson was mortified to death and thought it wise to keep his foolery from becoming public. Victor Lustig had already concluded that Poisson would not go to the police, yet he constantly read the leading newspapers to see if the scam had been reported. Lustig's guess came true. Once Lustig was sure that his scam went unreported, he decided to pull off the same scam once again. He returned to Paris and got down to ready his trap once again. He went through the same motions that he undertook in his last attempt and set his theater to fleece another scrap dealer. He managed to repeat every trick and even made his new mark pay him the bribe. But this one happened to be a little more strong-willed than his predecessor. He reported the matter to the police. Lustig has already seized up the situation. He was on a ship heading towards New York. No sooner than Lustig landed in the USA, he was out and about on his new scams. This time, he embarked upon a precarious venture. It was because Lustig planned to scam Al Capone, a murderous gangster of his time. If Al Capone had ever had a shred of doubt about his fraudulent motive, Lustig would have become a nice meal of sharks in the Atlantic. But this was Lustig, the greatest con of the 20th century. He played it very safely. He went to Al Capone and presented him with a proposition to invest in a scam that would earn him huge profits in a little time and without much effort. As he was a silky speaker, he won Al Capone's confidence. Al Capone paid him $50,000 and warned Lustig on his life if he ever tried to dodge him. Lustig took the money and kept it at a secret and safe place, as he had already planned it. After 2 months, Lustig returned the whole amount to Al Capone, saying his scam didn't work. Al Capone was really impressed with his honesty. According to his scam rules, Lustig skillfully made Al Capone realize that Lustig had his entire wealth lost in executing the scam, but he did ask Al Capone for help. Rather, he made Al Capone pity him and ask him about his plans. Al Capone did the same and asked him, "What is your next venture?" To which Lustig casually revealed that he needed $5,000 to start over again in his economic endeavor. And that was the rich catch Lustig had for him right from the start. Al Capone bought his story and paid him the amount as aid. Lustig played with fire, but he proved that he was a master of con artistry. Now, it was the year 1930. Lustig had run a number of successful scams and made a mark in the history of con men. But he had realized that his faculties would go weak day by day. So he thought of a once-forever scam, and that was printing imitation money. He collaborated with two counterfeiters, William Watts and Tom Shaw, to conduct a large-scale counterfeiting operation. His partners engraved plates to print fake bills, and Lustig arranged a ring of couriers to distribute the fake bills across the country. They supplied thousands of counterfeit currency notes in the US economy and became millionaires. Though he was earning huge income from his counterfeiting enterprise, yet he could not isolate himself from active involvement in scams, and therefore, he pulled off his scam of Rumanian Box once again. And this time, he tried his skills at the sheriff of Texas. When the sheriff realized he was tricked, he followed Lustig and tracked him down in Chicago. But it was Victor Lustig, a magician of tongue. Lustig convinced him that indeed the sheriff was not operating the machine in a proper way. Lustig then paid him some money as a compensation for the inconvenience that the sheriff had been through. But all that money was forged currency. The sheriff was later apprehended for using fake money. And once arrested, the sheriff disclosed the scam of Rumanian Box, and thus the dossier of Lustig in the police department grew heavier. Lustig ran his scams in 2 continents, but eluded the grasp of law for a considerable amount of time. He was always ahead of the investigations that had been conducted to uncover his corrupt enterprise, but he never knew he would be stabbed from behind. It was his mistress named Billy May. When she learned Lustig was cheating on her for a younger mistress, she got pathologically jealous. She made an anonymous call to police and tipped off Lustig's secret to them. He was arrested on May 10, 1935, in New York. Lustig immediately scapegoated his partners and denied any direct involvement in the crime. But this time, his luck didn't favor him, because the police found a peculiar key in his possession. When asked about the key, he expressed his naivety, but it was later found to open a locker in the Times Square subway station containing $51,000 in counterfeit bills and the plates with which they had been printed. Now, Lustig was convicted of a federal crime. But Lustig was not the one who would give up so easily. The day before his trial, he pretended to be extremely sick and was sent to the medical wing. From there, he made a rope of bed sheets and used it to climb down a multiple-story building through a window and escaped. But this time, the police chased him with an incredible speed, and he was recaptured in Pittsburgh just after 1 month. He could not escape and was pled guilty at his trial. He was sent to Alcatraz Island in California. After serving 12 years of his term in prison, he contracted pneumonia and died on March 9, 1947. Some people might tick him off as only a scoundrel, but indeed, he was more than that. No doubt his profession can never be justified, but no one can dismiss the fact that he was a rarity, a man with a brain of his own class. He displayed ultimate professionalism and played with the emotions of people with exceptional conviction in his knowledge of human psychology. And indeed, he educated the people and posterity how to guard their vulnerabilities. Alas, the man died with a whimper and not with a bang. If you have liked the video, don't forget to subscribe and leave your comments about Count Victor Lustig in the comment box. See you in the next one.